Hey, what's going on, guys? It is Sunday, November 17th, 2019. Wanted to share an experience I had with you wanted to share the experience with you that I had last night. Just dropped my little thing here. And so that was with dealing with eBay returns and how to deal with a false item not as described return, or an INAD, I-N-A-D. What happens here is that whether you allow free returns or buyer paid returns, or just you don't offer returns at all, no matter what, an eBay buyer can force a return. They can force eBay's hand on a return by saying the item was not as described, and eBay's almost always going to side with the buyer on this and allow your return. So the situation that I had at hand was I sold a Nintendo Wii, and I sold it via auction, and I sold it for about $65, and the buyer paid about $20 shipping to their house, so a combined total of about $80 to ship this item to this person. They got the Wii, they set it up, and they said that the Wii was broken, but this was my personal Wii, so I knew that that wasn't true. But there's nothing I can really do to dispute that because of eBay's policy. eBay doesn't allow the seller to show that the item was working. eBay does not make the buyer prove that the item is not working. This is a totally crappy plan that eBay has, a policy that the eBay has, and it causes the allowance of people to manipulate the return process. And even if you were offering, returns within 30 days for any product, and you can set it so that the buyer pays the return shipping if they choose to return it, the buyer could still lie and say that his reason isn't buyer's remorse. His reason is that the item was not as described. And what eBay would do in that situation is side with him and make you pay the return shipping because he's saying it's not as described. So no matter how you set it up, there's no way to really stop them from forcing the hand of an item not as described return. But what I found was that whenever you do get the return back, there is a right way and a wrong way to file the appeal so that you can at least recoup some of that return shipping that you had to pay, that you shouldn't have had to pay because the buyer was the one that lied about the reason for the return. Are you following with me here? So the buyer basically said that the Wii was broken. It was not broken when I received, so I had to accept the return, and that's what eBay told me to do. They told me to go ahead and accept the return and refund the buyer on the spot, and that when I got the Wii, to go ahead and check it over and make sure that it was what it was, and if it wasn't, to go ahead and file an appeal. So I filed an appeal, or I got the Wii back, I set it up, it worked perfectly. I took pictures, videos, whatever, of the Wii working perfectly, and then I called them to file the appeal, and they told me, and that was because they told me to wait 48 hours, accept the return, or actually, I had already gotten the return. I accepted the return. You're supposed to do that part no matter what. Accept the return. Even if you're sure that the buyer is ripping you off and that they're lying, accept the return. You get the return back, and what I was informed of whenever I showed them that the Wii was working was that I needed to wait 48 hours until the case closed, and then call back and file an appeal on the return, and then I would be reimbursed the return shipping because, it's not, the only reason that I had to pay return shipping was because the buyer lied about the reason for return. So I call back to file the appeal, and they told me, well, because you already refunded the buyer, we can't honor this appeal. We can't refund you your return shipping. And I said, well, wait a minute, the rep yesterday told me that that's what I was supposed to do. So I called back and talked to another rep, and he gave me the actual scoop. The original rep that I talked to lied to me, and eBay reps will lie to you, so you cannot trust them. They lied to me, and they said that I should accept the return and refund the buyer and then file the appeal. That is the wrong way to go about doing it. eBay tells you to do that so that whenever you go to then file the appeal and get your return shipping reimbursed, there's nothing they can do. Their hands are tied and they don't have to refund you. Don't do it that way. The correct way to do it is to not accept the return even. Like, don't even accept the return on that end and make the buyer escalate the return. And of course, that will give you a ding, which I didn't like the idea of. However, then when the buyer forces the hand, you can say, I don't agree with the reason for the return. And then at that point, you can appeal and get your credit, and again, they won't reimburse you in cash value anymore. They'll only give you a credit on your account, which is totally crappy. And I hope somebody from eBay watches this and sees that policy sucks, and that's a terrible way to treat your sellers, but we have to deal with it anyways. The rep also told me something else that's pretty awesome. He told me that if you actually if you put free returns on everything, and I'm hoping that this rep didn't lie to me about this, because this is going out on YouTube and everyone's going to see it. If this isn't the case, comment and let me know, because we just caught another rep, a second rep on the same case in a second lie. But this rep told me that if you put all your listings at accept free returns and just do free returns, and I know what you're thinking, that opens the floodgates for people to just have buyer's remorse all the time. But he told me that then if you get the item back and you didn't agree with the reason for the return, you can change the amount of the refund. So go back to that say I had offered free returns. This is what this guy is telling me, that if I had offered free returns on this I would have had to pay the $20 for him to ship it back to me, which I would have had to pay that anyways because he said it was item not as described. But when I got the item back and I realized that it was described, that I was telling the truth to begin with, and that this guy lied and said that it was broken just so that he could get the return, I could then only refund him $40 instead of $60. See, I shorted him $20, and that covered the cost of the $20 shipping that I had to pay return, only because he lied and manipulated the system. So if this is the case, then this is the workaround. Yes, you're going to get a lot more buyer's remorse returns, but you're going to be able to control the amount that you refund these buyers, which totally changes the game, right? That totally means that you get to decide and determine when a buyer shipped something back to you on a lie. And they said that this case will automatically close, and the buyer, even if the buyer files appeal on how much you refunded them, they can only get like a one-time credit through eBay, and it has nothing to do with your account. You aren't charged it. None of that happens. So what we learned here is that, and I've been doing this a long time, and they've changed policy several times, but now the trick is, if you are sure that the item you sent was as described and this buyer is not telling the truth, do not accept the return. Let the buyer escalate the return. Then eBay will probably step in, force the return. Then you appeal the reasoning and say, hey, this item was just as described. I didn't agree with the reason for return. That's why I didn't accept it. And I'm willing to refund him the $60 for the item, but I want reimbursed for that $20 shipping or whatever the shipping cost was. And they'll give you that in the form of an eBay credit, which sucks also, I get it, but at least you could use that to buy shipping supplies or something else that you need and put towards your business, and it's not a total loss. It's not the end of the world. So hopefully this video helped you on how to handle those returns that you're sure are not the right way, that are not being truthful. And go about it that way. Now, every once in a while, be careful with this. Don't do this on every return, or obviously it's going to show in the system that you do this every time, and you're probably going to lose your right to offer partial refunds like that, or they're going to see you as a red flag, right? They're going to be like, well, this guy just like rips people off all the time. So don't do it like that all the time. Be sure when you're sure that the item you sent was good. Like you tested the item, it was good, and this buyer's clearly just lying about it. Do it then. But hopefully this gives you some alleviation from losing those monies, because on this deal I lost $40. So I'm here to tell you I lost the $40. eBay did not rule in my favor. They told me that because I accepted the return and the refund, that I was no longer able to appeal the reasoning. And then when I told eBay that I was going to record the phone call of them telling me that this is their policy and that can't help me, the appeals rep went into panic mode. She said, you can't record me, which you are allowed to record them. I'm in a two-party consent state. All I have to do is announce that I'm recording you, just like you announce you're recording me, for quality control purposes. I didn't end up actually recording her, but if you want to send a little shock scare into the eBay rep, go ahead and tell them that as well. But otherwise, this is your way to get around it. And as far as that original eBay rep that lied to me and told me the wrong information so that I wouldn't be able to process the appeal, screw that guy. I hope he gets fired, and I'll be rating him 0 stars. But otherwise, this has been another ShipFlip video. If you like the content, go ahead and subscribe to the page. Like this video if you found it useful. Comment some ways or some other things that people have done, or some things or maybe that what the eBay rep told me is wrong. But otherwise, hopefully you can use this to your advantage next time you get an item not as described return that you're sure was described correctly. Again, this has been a ShipFlip video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day and keep on flipping.